The fluorescent lights of the auto repair shop flickered above Maya Torres as she wiped grease from her hands for the last time that night. At 32, her life was measured in worn work boots, overdue bills, and the quiet discipline of pretending everything was fine for her daughter. Her back ached from crawling under cars, and her mind ached more from the numbers that never aligned no matter how carefully she planned. When her boss told her her hours would be cut, his voice carried apology, but the words landed like a verdict. Maya nodded, swallowing panic, because panic didn't fix anything. That evening, she drove home in her aging car, its mirror held on with tape, rehearsing excuses she might give her landlord. Sophie greeted her with a smile too bright for the circumstances, asking about dinner, about school, about nothing that mattered and everything that did. After Sophie fell asleep, Maya sat alone at the small kitchen table, surrounded by envelopes stamped past due. She made instant coffee that tasted like resignation and opened her laptop, expecting nothing but rejection and spam. Instead, an email waited, formal and unsettling, claiming she was the beneficiary of an abandoned estate. Maya laughed softly, shaking her head at the absurdity. Nothing like that happened to people like her. Yet something about the message lingered, pressing against her exhaustion, as if fate had slipped a quiet question into an otherwise ordinary night. The email refused to disappear from Maya's thoughts over the following days. More messages arrived, each one more detailed, more convincing, until skepticism gave way to reluctant curiosity. A phone call confirmed the impossible. The estate was real, the paperwork legitimate, the invitation unavoidable. On her day off, Maya drove through winding roads that climbed into the hills, the city fading behind her. At the end of a narrow, overgrown drive stood a rusted iron gate, half consumed by vines, groaning as it opened. Beyond it rose a massive mansion, darkened by years of neglect yet undeniably grand, like a monument someone wanted erased. Inside, dust motes floated through slanted sunlight, furniture lay covered like sleeping ghosts, and the silence felt deliberate rather than empty. Maya walked slowly, her footsteps echoing in rooms far too large for her life. She expected rot and ruin, but beneath the decay she sensed intention, craftsmanship, and secrets layered deep into the structure. When the attorney explained that the man who built this place had searched for her for decades, Maya felt grief without memory and anger without clarity. Her mother had never spoken of him, never hinted at this hidden history. The estate came with a condition. She had to live there before selling it. With her options already exhausted, Maya agreed, unaware that stepping into this house meant stepping into a truth far more dangerous than poverty. Moving into the mansion felt less like a fresh start, and more like crossing a line she couldn't step back over. Maya packed their small apartment in a single afternoon, explaining to Sophie that they were going on an adventure, because children understood bravery better than fear. The first nights were spent on sleeping bags, the house creaking and settling like it was learning their names. Maya lay awake listening to unfamiliar sounds, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. Cleaning became her anchor. She scrubbed floors, cleared debris, and opened windows room by room, trying to impose order on something that resisted it. As days passed, odd details emerged. Hallways felt shorter than they should. Walls sounded hollow when tapped. Measurements didn't align. Maya had spent years fixing broken things, and this house felt engineered to hide its flaws. One evening, while moving a heavy bookshelf in the library, she felt it shift unnaturally. A narrow corridor revealed itself behind the wall, thick with dust and silence. Her heart pounded as she followed it to a concealed room filled with filing cabinets. Inside were meticulous records of properties, transactions, and names spanning decades. Mixed among them were personal notes tracking her mother and later her. Maya sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the realization that this house wasn't just abandoned. It was designed as a vault. Whatever was hidden here had been protected with obsession and patience, and now it belonged to her. The deeper Maya searched, the clearer the pattern became. The mansion wasn't simply hiding wealth, it was preserving truth in fragments. A locked office concealed behind false walls held letters accusing powerful figures of fraud, theft, and ruin. Photographs, recordings, and financial trails painted a picture of corruption that reached far beyond a single property. Then came the valuables, diamonds hidden beneath floorboards, gold sealed behind panels, cash stored like an emergency escape plan. Each discovery made Maya's stomach tighten. Secrets of this scale were never left unattended without consequence. The most staggering revelation lay beneath the house itself, a hidden chamber carved into the earth, holding priceless art believed lost forever. Paintings, sculptures, and artifacts were catalogued and preserved, their estimated value almost impossible to comprehend. Maya understood then that this inheritance was never meant to be enjoyed quietly. It was a burden passed to someone ordinary enough to disrupt an extraordinary system. Not long after, the signs appeared. A black car lingering too long at the end of the drive. Polite inquiries disguised as casual interest. An offer so generous it felt like a threat. When an anonymous call warned her to sell and forget what she had found, fear finally surfaced in full force. Yet beneath it rose something steadier, resolve forged by years of survival. She had endured abandonment and scarcity. She would not be erased now. Knowing fear alone wouldn't protect her, Maya chose strategy over panic. She began documenting everything, copying records and storing them in multiple places, determined that no single fire or theft could erase the truth. An investigative journalist who had once tried to expose the same corruption found her way to the mansion, drawn by the sudden transfer of ownership and the whispers it stirred. Together, they worked quietly, contacting lawyers and organizations beyond the reach of local influence. Maya changed Sophie's routines, prioritized safety, and learned the exhausting discipline of constant vigilance. The mansion transformed from a threat into a responsibility. When the evidence finally surfaced publicly, it didn't explode all at once. It spread methodically, names falling one by one, investigations reopening, fortunes unraveling under scrutiny. Maya stayed out of the spotlight, refusing interviews, protecting her daughter from a story that could easily consume them both. She sold what could be sold legally, donated what belonged to the public, and ensured the rest could never vanish again. The house slowly felt less haunted, as if the secrets it guarded were finally breathing. Maya realized she was no longer reacting to life. She was deciding how it would unfold, even if the cost was carrying the weight of truths others were too afraid to hold. Months passed, and with each passing day the mansion felt less like a prison and more like a witness finally allowed to speak. Repairs replaced decay, light-filled rooms once sealed in shadow, and Sophie's laughter echoed where silence had ruled. Maya remained cautious, knowing consequences often arrived late, but fear no longer controlled her choices. She learned to balance protection with purpose, ensuring the truth remained visible without placing her family directly in harm's path. The house's hidden spaces were documented, secured, and where necessary, sealed again, not to hide wrongdoing but to preserve evidence responsibly. Maya often thought about the man who built this place, imagining the isolation he must have endured carrying knowledge no one wanted. She understood now why he chose her. She was not powerful, not connected, not compromised. She was stubborn, resilient, and unwilling to look away. Wealth came and went in controlled measures, enough to stabilize her life but never enough to erase who she was. Sophie adjusted to her new world with remarkable grace, unaware of how narrowly her future had been protected. At night, Maya would sit on the terrace, looking out over the hills, reflecting on how close she had come to dismissing that first email. One ignored message would have left everything buried, unchanged. Instead, she had become the keeper of a story that demanded courage rather than comfort, action rather than escape. The danger never fully vanished, but it receded, replaced by accountability and exposure. Maya understood that justice rarely arrived cleanly or quickly. It crept forward, fueled by persistence and visibility. She accepted that her life would never return to its former simplicity, but she also knew simplicity had never truly served her. The mansion stood as proof that abandonment and inheritance could exist in the same breath, that places forgotten by the world often held its most important truths. Maya taught Sophie not about fear, but about awareness, about asking questions, about standing firm even when answers were inconvenient. The house that once felt threatening now felt purposeful, its hidden architecture a reminder that history was rarely what it seemed on the surface. Maya no longer saw herself as lucky or cursed. She saw herself as chosen, not by fate but by circumstance and character. Every repaired wall, every unlocked truth, reinforced that survival was not the opposite of courage, but its foundation. She had walked into the unknown expecting decay and emerged carrying responsibility. Proof that ordinary people could still disrupt extraordinary wrongdoing when they refused to stay silent. Standing in the quiet of the restored library one evening, Maya watched Sophie read on the floor where secrets once slept behind walls. The house felt calm now, no longer guarding lies but bearing witness to truth revealed at great cost. Maya reflected on how easily she could have sold everything, walked away richer and safer, leaving the past buried where it was meant to stay. Instead, she chose the harder path, the one that demanded patience, courage, and constant restraint. She understood now that inheritance was never about money or property. It was about responsibility, about what you protected, and what you exposed when silence was easier. Life had not suddenly become simple or painless, but it had become honest. Maya closed the lights and guided Sophie upstairs, listening to the familiar sound